Evening, fellas. Good to see everybody for another episode of The Blind Pig, courtesy of BGObsession.com. Happy to be back-ish on a Tuesday. A little odd night this week. Normally we do this on Wednesday night, but some scheduling opportunities allowed us to get us a day early, and so we figured we would record and get it up. Quick intros. Top left
Does
is
it work?
John. He hails as Boone. Bottom left is Chris. He hails as Chris. Bottom right is Bob. You can find him at Neophyte. Top right is Mark. He hails as Ohm. My name's Derek. You can catch me at Silent Threat. So come on by bgobsession.com and join the partay. The bunch of good, interesting discussions going on right now. A couple of new threads, including what undoubtedly we will talk to about at some point this evening, the future of Sam Howell. That's kind of the big one right now on the board. So I figure if we wanted to really just jump into that one, I don't know that we want to revisit. Oh, you know what? We can revisit a little bit of the Rams because it will play into the future of Sam Howell. So to take from John, we can start it off. What are a couple things that we liked from that game? Don't everybody go at once.
I like Duron Payne. I thought he played a good game that was his best game in a while. He had 2 sacks, 2 tackles for a loss, and 3 quarterback hits. Pretty good day for him. Defense was awful, but I like Jacoby Brissett. I'll hold off on anything else. I know you guys play that one. I felt like the guys played hard, which I know nobody wants to hear that with the results that we saw, but I didn't feel like it was a game where they just didn't show up at all. weren't. I mean, especially on the defensive side of the ball, there were a lot of bodies flying around, and we're just not very good. But I don't think it was a lack of, guys showing up and efforting. I saw a lot of effort, but that's the scary part, I guess, is that was our effort. That was the results of all that effort.
I thought the defense played hard. I thought Quan Martin had one of his best games. I thought Khaleke Hudson had a very strong game. Payne, I agree with. Offensively, man, I mean, Terry had a good game. That's about it for me.
Yeah, I love the reemergence of Terry McLaurin as a deep threat. Well, I guess what I should say is the reemergence of the success of Terry McLaurin as a deep threat. 6 for 141 with a TD and a long of 48. So not a bad day at the office for the young man. Chris kind of stole my thunder. I was going to bring up Khaleke Hudson, man. The kid just felt like he was everywhere. I still don't know that he's starter material when you level up the entire roster the way we need to level up the roster, especially at the linebacker position. But he's certainly making a case to be part of the conversation.
I've been pretty down lately and short shrifting the likes. So I made a couple of notes today. And as I started writing them down, I surprised myself that I came up with more than I thought I was going to. And following up on what you guys are saying, I like that Ron's D, despite giving up multiple explosives with broken assignments like we've been seeing all year, unlike what we've been seeing all year, around the line of scrimmage, the front 7 were far more active than we saw under Jack Del Rio the last couple of seasons. Ron sent blitzers, he did the false blitzes and dropped people back. And it was so refreshing to see an active Washington defense. I mean, we knew they were bad and we knew they're undermanned and we know they don't communicate well, but they were playing hard and playing active football. And I thought that was a breath of fresh air. I liked that Tress Way didn't have his career ended on a blatant cheap shot that probably should have gotten a guy thrown out of the game. He's lucky he didn't break a clavicle, get concussed, whatever, on that horrible snap. I thought his season was over when he took that hit. I like that Cameron Cheeseman didn't cost Tress the year and maybe more than that. And the last one is, I know we're going to be talking a lot about Sam, but I wrote it down and it's a little 4-parter, so I'll do it fast. I like that Sam is going to be starting against the Jets for multiple reasons. One is kind of snarky given the way he's been playing lately. It gives us less chance that we're going to fuck up and win. Apologies to everybody who doesn't want to tank. I kind of like that it gave Jacoby Brissett a platform. He's been nothing but a good soldier all year. He got some film. If he ends up on the free agent market this year, I like that he's got something to show. Hey, I played 8 snaps. I threw 2 touchdowns by whatever. I still got it. I think it was good for Jacoby. I think it's good for the locker room. And finally, and most importantly, I like that Sam, we're way past him about it being giving the team the best chance to win. At this point, it's about continuing to evaluate Sam Howell. He's starting to struggle. We've seen him have difficulty against good defenses, and he's going to get a chance to play himself out of that over the last 3 games if he gets to play him. So it's important, obviously, for us to see it. It's obviously very important because every snap that he puts on film is more data for the new regime to use to evaluate him going forward for next year and beyond. Those are my likes.
Derek,
Did
you got
anybody
anything to add on
mention?
the likes front?
Did anybody mention Terry McLaurin? I
Yes.
had to step
Yeah.
away from. All right, well then I won't be redundant. So then the
I'd like to
dislike.
tag on to what Mark said about the defense. They had 2 forced fumbles in the second quarter. I believe both were in the second quarter, which we don't see that very often. Of course, we couldn't do a damn thing about that. We only held the ball for like 2 minutes. I'm transitioning to don't likes. We only held the ball for like under 3 minutes in the second quarter while getting 2 extra possessions because we forced fumbles. So I don't know how you do that.
Before you transfer to don't likes too terribly far, I got an extra like to toss in there that's going to be a really weird one for anybody that's listened to this pod, and especially me for, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years now. We gave up a single sack. I realize a lot of that has to do with quarterback play and the guys getting rid of the football and recognizing pressure, and in the case of at least Sam running for his life. But when was the last time we can say that this offense gave up a single sack in a game? That's NFL, that's an NFL expectation. We gave up a sack. Okay, great. That's a normal day at the office for the vast majority of NFL teams, but it is a huge step up for this team. So it kind of warranted, especially when you consider we changed offensive linemen on 3 separate occasions during the game due to injury, right? I mean, we started the game with 5 guys, and by the time the game was over, we were playing at least 3 different guys. We were playing 8, we played 8 offensive linemen during the game. So
Isn't it interesting, right? So a month ago, the reason Sam Howell might not become a great quarterback was because he kept taking too many sacks, and that was a fatal flaw. We're no longer talking about him taking sacks, where we've moved on to other things with Sam that I'm sure we'll be talking about.
yeah.
Something I thought about earlier today was, I don't know if it jumped out at you guys, but Sam rolled out more in this game than I've seen in any other game this year. Just lots of sprint outs, lots of rollouts. Some of it designed, I think. A lot of it designed. Some of it maybe just by necessity. But the thought that I had was, I think he's really good on the run, typically, but it is harder to make completions when you're moving like that. When you've got like 3/4 of your plays are not from the pocket, I don't think that lends itself to being super consistent hitting receivers in stride. So I'm not trying to make excuses for the young man. That was just something I thought about, because we've seen a lot more rollouts and not straight dropbacks the last couple of weeks.
I just had a strange thought. This is a fresh, strange thought. Earlier in the season, when Howell was spending more time in the pocket and taking a lot more sacks, he was also a lot more successful throwing the ball downfield and had better results throwing the ball downfield. Since they clearly, both him and perhaps Bieniemy, made changes to get the ball out of his hand quickly, he hasn't taken as many sacks, and he hasn't been as good throwing the ball.
Well,
Is there a correlation there?
Yeah, downfield. That's true, Chris.
I think that's a function of on schedule versus off schedule plays, to be honest with you. When early in the season, Sam was, one of the things we talked about was how he was willing to stand in the pocket and get popped in the face and still go down the field. Same time he was getting torn apart on the field and off for taking too many sacks.
Right.
I don't know how many, John, you mentioned like the rollouts and how many are designed and how many aren't. I had thought that I might go through and look at it and try to parse together, if you can tell as a fan. A lot of them look to me like he says, fuck it, I'm not staying in the pocket and getting crushed and maybe turning the ball over. I'm going to get out and try to make something happen. And yeah, that all works together, right? When you're out running around, you're off schedule and you're hoping your receiver and you are on the same page and you can make an accurate throw. That doesn't lend itself to, unless you're Mahomes throwing it 60 yards downfield and waiting for Tyreek to go find it. That's a tough way to make a living.
Do we want to touch on the things we didn't like, or do we want to jump right into the Sam Howell conversation?
I've got a don't like that. I mean, the other things I
Well,
have the don't likes have to do with Sam, but I've got one that
Let me
isn't.
jump on one then.
Do it.
What I didn't like a lot was the fact that we saw so much Jonathan Williams on the
Yeah.
field. Even
Hard to-
after Gibson had clearly been benched, and I heard somebody, Kime or somebody today talking about that he missed a free and clear blocker or blitzer on one play, and it was pretty obvious that after that he was distant. Why the hell is Williams the one that's out there getting, you know what I mean? Like, that drives me crazy. And Rodriguez should have played every single snap after that at that point. What are you doing trotting out Williams?
Well, and Gibson was running really hard at the start of that game. I thought Gibson came to, in fact, I think the commentators referenced it during the game early on. They're like, wow, Gibson really is running with some urgency today, but I don't know what happened there. I had the same question, Derek.
Gibson on offense and Emmanuel Forbes on defense seem to be the only two players on the entire roster that the coaching staff disciplines.
Yeah, that they hold accountable for their play.
Nobody else does.
Well, Cameron Cheeseman.
I said on the roster.
It just
Accountable, baby.
took 8 weeks too long.
Yeah.
I didn't like the third downs, man. That was the story of the game for me, is that we could not convert a third down to save our life. I think we were 21% on third down, which is about half of where we were in some of our better games. So, I mean, you can't beat it. You can't beat a bad team converting 21% of your third downs. It was just, I don't know how many 3 and outs we had. I wish I had counted that because it was quite a few.
I didn't like Ron Rivera's response to Nikki Javala's question about pulling Sam from the game. And he said, basically, I'm just trying to protect him because they've got their ears pinned back. They had 1 sack so far in the game. And they'd also seemed to relax. Maybe it's because they have a game coming up Thursday. Maybe it's because Sean McVay felt bad and this game's in hand and we can relax a little bit. And maybe the defense changed up some. But I don't believe it was to protect Sam. And then yesterday in the follow-up question, because clearly Nikki didn't believe so either, she asked if he would have, if circumstances were different and we were still in the playoff hunt, would Brissett be starting next week? And he said, well, that's, we're not, but if we were, that's something that would seriously be under consideration.
There was a whole bunch of word salad, right?
Yeah, I didn't like either of those two.
And why, I'm sorry, but if you're an NFL coach and you even answer that question, you're just a complete dumbass. That's the kind of question that Bill Belichick would say, well, that's not the situation. Next question. I mean, you don't answer it. It's a dumb question.
Just
it's
the next game.
Actually, what I can hear Bill saying is no.
Right.
I mean, I think he would, I think Bill is perfectly willing to lie straight to the face of the press, and the fewer words, the better. And I wish Ron would learn that lesson. Although
Ron is a master at, I'm sorry, I keep interrupting you guys tonight. Ron is a master at bullshitting and lying. He just uses too many words to do it. He just doesn't know when to stop.
Right, which is why I said, at least that's some entertainment at this point in time, because it's more entertaining than the team. Is what's the answer going to be after the game?
My only dislike that we haven't already touched on is I expected more from Eric Bieniemy, and it occurs to me 14 weeks in against competent defenses on sort of decent teams, our offense really hasn't progressed. At least it hadn't with Sam Howell. And I'm not putting that out there other than any other reason. I don't see that they've grown any. I don't see that the scheme is any more clever. I don't think the running game has evolved at all. It's still that same simple delayed running game that when we do use it, just seems maybe effective occasionally, but not it's anything you can lean on. 14 games in, I'm not sure that EB's really helped himself that much in whatever it is that he came here for.
We have so many players that are not playing to their potential. And I don't know if they've just tuned BNME out. I don't know whether it's how, I don't know what it is, but Logan Thomas is awful. Dotson is awful. That kid's invisible, man. I cannot believe what we saw last year to what we're seeing now, where I think he had one catch yesterday or last weekend.
He had one catch on one target.
It's not just the O line. In other words, it's the entire offense.
Brissett.
I know McLaurin set a personal record, but I mean, let's be honest, that was like a couple of long bombs and I mean, I'm not diminishing that. They're good for him, but even and the other thing I noticed in the first half, especially, was it just didn't look like there was anybody open. I mean, every pass that Howell tried to throw, we were blanketed. I mean, there were hardly any routes where the receiver was just open.
I can think of one play that Terry McLaurin was absolutely wide open, and the DB decided to hold his hand.
Yep.
Yeah, I think I'd like to see film breakdown on that, John. I keep hearing every week from some of the analysts that part of the problem that Sam's had is being on schedule, and that the suggestion has been that there are guys open on schedule on time, and for whatever reason, sometimes it's the line, sometimes it's Sam doesn't see it. Maybe the receiver isn't quite where he's supposed to be. But I keep hearing that there are these opportunities that he hasn't been able to capitalize on. And my hope is that whoever comes in next year and looks at film and looks at all 22s and talks to everybody will be able to see how much of it is on just Sam not seeing stuff. Because if that's the case, that's a big factor going forward for them.
I can circle back real quick to my crazy new fresh thought. Is that because there's been such an emphasis on getting the ball out quick that defenses are reacting to that, playing up, taking away all that short stuff, and then that doesn't leave anything else? Because Sam's in his head, he's going 1-2, I got to get the ball out of my hand.
That's very fair. And the other thing is a lot of these better defenses have been doing a lot of window dressing. I don't know if you guys watch this when you watch the replay of the game. The Rams all night long, while Sam was in there, at the line, there's 7-8 guys. And then about half the time they'll send 1 or 2. The other times they'll be dropping back, a lot of window dressing to confuse them and make them make those quick decisions. Against Jacoby, they didn't do that. I don't know if you guys noticed that. But against Jacoby, the Rams rushed their 4, dropped back in coverage, and played them completely different.
Completely different football games. When they changed quarterbacks, it became a completely different game, Mark.
Well, I think they felt like the game was in hand for starters, which that always makes a difference.
And they play Thursday, so you know.
So real quick on the throw to Terry, he was absolutely open. The ball could not have been placed better. Everything about that play was perfect, including Terry McLaurin being that close to making a circus one-handed catch down the sideline anyway, and the ref missed the call. It is what it is. If anybody with any real judgment of Sam Howell should be able to look at that play and say, that play did not fail because of Howell. It did not. So, period.
No. He threw the perfect ball. If Terry had 2 hands, he comes down with that football inbounds.
And he might have scored a touchdown. To your point, the other thing, the other layer of this onion, Chris, as we peel it back, is how much to try to get the ball out quickly and or save Sam has Bieniemy, because I've seen clips all the last 2 days of Sam's rolling right and Antonio Gibson's open near the sideline, and instead of throwing it there, he comes back across his body, throws it, an attempted pass to McLaurin. It's high, it gets tipped up, intercepted. Then there's another one where Jonathan Williams is apparently streaking down the sideline on a wheel route. I mean, how much are they in his head at practice? It's first read, second read. If it's not there, move. If it's not there, get out of the pocket. If it's not there, run. To try to again put an emphasis on getting the ball out or getting him out of the pocket where he's out of harm's way. So, how much are you taking away the third and fourth and fifth read from your own offense? And then now everybody's looking at Sam and saying, "Well, that guy was wide open. That guy was wide open, but Sam's running towards the opposite sideline for his life." And you expect him to, if he had made the throw, y'all would be hammering him like we did a couple weeks ago where he did that lollipop back across the field that Crowder, I think, ended up catching it and running it for about 25. So I don't have the answer. Obviously, I don't think anybody does because we're not in that locker room. But to your point, Chris, is how much is how much, and you know what? We can go right into the Sam conversation. I posted a post today about Sam. How much can we truly judge Sam when you don't have confidence in the coaching staff? How much can you truly judge Sam when you don't have confidence in the offense? Beyond just the fact that there's nothing on the field with him, or at least it doesn't appear to be anything on the field with him. I think there's more there, but we don't know. Would you put it past them to say, Sam, dude, don't go looking back at the running back. It's not, you don't have time for that. If one or two isn't there, you need to step up and get outside and try and either run for it or try to get to the sideline or something. And then he's not looking, but then everybody wants to pound Sam for that.
The question is, if you are hired to come in to make those kind of decisions, whether it's as a GM or a president of football operations or a head coach with dual responsibilities, you're going to watch a lot of tape. You're going to watch a lot of Sam's performance. Are you also going to be putting those things under scrutiny? Are you going to say, well, this talent's terrible or the scheme's terrible, etc.? Rhetorical question, because I don't know. I don't know what they'll do. I don't know if they'll just look at game film and how far they'll pass that down. But somebody,
they're going to look at
a pretty big decision.
They're going to look at all of the above, Chris, and stuff that we don't know. They'll talk to the coaches that'll talk to them. They'll talk to the other players. They'll talk to scouts. They'll talk to opposing defensive coordinators. I bet you who are willing to talk. Anybody who's had anything to do with Sam's on-field performance, they'll make it a qualified judgment. And the funny thing is, this is the one thing that I wanted to make sure we talked about this week is if we were waiting for Ron Rivera and the Martys to make the judgment on Sam for next year, I'd be like really upset and concerned that they're going to fuck it up either way. The fact that presumably we're going to have a professional team of evaluators and coming in with a clean slate and looking at Sam and what he can and can't do, I'm really okay for the first time that I can remember saying, I'll let the professionals decide, because I'm trusting, hopefully, maybe naively, that we're going to have a legitimate brain trust finally that knows what the hell they're looking at with a young quarterback like that.
Yeah. Go ahead, Bob.
Well, I was going to say, I'm actually a little concerned that whoever comes in. So, let's assume for a moment that what we think is going to happen actually happens. And that is that Ron and the bulk of, if not all of the staff, get politely excused the Monday or Tuesday after the final game from further duties. So a new GM gets hired a week later, whatever it takes, and they come in and they've got reams of tape to look at. I watch a lot of YouTube guys, professional quarterbacks who sit there and go, Sam had this and he had this and he had this. Now, I don't know what the first read was. I don't know this. I don't know that. I don't know what the play call was. You hear all that constantly. They are guessing. Without Eric Bieniemy there to tell them what the first read was, is a GM going to know any more than Dan Orlovsky knows sitting in his living room picking apart Sam Howell's tape on his own without any inside information? If we sweep the old out the door, can we really pull up the playbook and look at the film and go, all right, Sam's first read was Terry. His second read was Jahan. Both of them were covered. He took off running. This was a good move. Are we going to be able to know that? Or is a
Yeah, you
GM
can
going to
ask.
be just throwing darts at a board like every other damn pundit
man,
in
they-
the world?
they-
No, I think you pull Sam in the room and you go straight up John Gruden quarterback school style. You know what I mean? And look at the film and say, hey, what was going on here? What's in your mind? They need to know if this is their guy.
Oddly enough, I actually trust Sam in that circumstance. I can't say I would do that with all the guys. My gut instinct with Sam is he would look at the tape and go, I screwed that play up.
Right.
Or I did this and I did this. If anything, I almost feel like Sam would take more responsibility than he's supposed to take in a lot of cases, where he should be going, I didn't have any time because the guy came off the edge and the inside, the left tackle took the outside guy, not the inside guy. And, you know, I don't know. But yeah, I see what you're saying, Derek. And absolutely that should be done.
I'm very confident. I'm sorry. I'm very confident in saying that there's no one on this coaching staff that's going to sit down with anyone. And if they did, they're not going to say, oh yeah, that was my fault. Not going to do it.
I would like to think Bieniemy would, but I don't know.
Not if he wants to work again.
Here's the other thing. What if Bieniemy's getting interviewed for this job?
I don't think he is.
So what we're talking about is what happens every year with every team that gets every team that changes regimes goes through this, where they have to analyze what they've got in-house, and they do it based on every professional chit that they have in their resume, right? And they talk to people, and I know Orlovsky and guys like that do film breakdowns with a whole lot less context than I'd like to think a guy who is literally sitting down with practice films and everything else that's available on a weekly basis that's going to be made available to these guys. So that's all I'm saying. There's so much that goes into this evaluation stuff that we don't have access to. We need to hope that whoever comes in knows that they know what they're doing. We have reason to be optimistic about that, I think. And by the way, Sam's going to be here, right? He's not going anywhere. We've got him under contract 2 more years. So either he's the starter going in or he's competing with somebody.
Well, they could trade him, but
or they could trade him if they get somebody offers up.
I don't know that I don't know that the new folks are gonna be wringing their hands like we are. I tend to think that they're gonna be looking more at like what do we like about the kid? What don't we like about the kid? There's a lot to like about him. He's got an NFL arm. He is mobile. He is tough as nails, and he's mature, and he's got a good head on his shoulders. The other stuff is stuff that you can that you might be able to fix, as far as making bad decisions, throwing too many picks, getting sacked too many times. But I don't know. And you also have to look at if they decide he's not that guy. Well, you've got the same book of questions about every kid in the draft times 10, because we have no NFL film on all the quarterbacks that are going to be in the draft. So it's really no different for Sam than it is for anybody else. And like Mark said, on any NFL franchise, and they might not get it right. That's the other thing I think we need to be prepared for is they're probably not going to be perfect in the decisions the new regime makes. I did a little exercise on that, and I'm not going to spend more than like 5 minutes on it. I was thinking that we keep comparing Howell to all the other starters in the NFL, but we compare him to the starters in the NFL that have been doing it for 4 and 5 and 7 seasons. So I did a really quick rundown, a cut and paste job from Pro Football Reference, just looking at 10 random starters. I didn't put Patrick Mahomes up there because there's no point in that. Nobody's going to compare it to Patrick Mahomes. But I put the guys who most of us would agree are top 10 quarterbacks, including a youngster like Trevor Lawrence. And I'm not going to go through all these stats, but kind of what jumped out at me was Howell is very accurate. Even, and I know Chris pointed out that that's changed in the last few weeks. He's had some of his worst games. However, on the season, he's 3rd out of these 11 quarterbacks in completion percentage. That's a big plus to me. He's thrown for a ton of yards, the third highest amount of yards, keeping in mind that he's going to end up playing a 17th games, which some of these guys would not have had in their first year. And then some of the other ones, total passing yards, assuming 200 yards a game for the rest of the games, rushing yards and touchdowns, he's right in the mix. The success percentage stat, I don't know if you guys have heard of that. It's passing success rate, which is basically on first down, how many times did you get 60% of the yards you needed? On second down, how many times did you get like 80 or 40? And then on third and fourth down, what percentage of the time did you convert? But anyway, he's doing pretty well in a lot of categories. Now, if you look in the negative column, he's at the bottom of the barrel in interceptions and interception percentage. He's down towards the bottom, passer rating and QBR, which I think the sacks come into play there. So that probably destroys any chance he has of looking good on that front. But the point of this whole exercise for me was, you know what? He looks a lot like these guys did in their first season. So maybe we need to take a deep breath. And I'm saying, when I say we, I mean the fan base, and just consider the fact that he's not done a bad job at all, with a couple of exceptions like the sack rate, which is not totally dependent on him. He hasn't really done a bad job in his first season under center. It doesn't matter what we think. That's the bottom line. You know, the new guys are going to decide, like we all know. But I think there's a lot more. There's just a lot of I think that the things that people are saying right now, because the last couple games have been ugly, are a little off base, a little trending far more negative than they should be based on what he's done for the whole year.
That's funny, John. Thanks for putting all that together. What I'm struck by and looking at this and even thinking about what we're doing and looking at just the numbers. If we had had this conversation after, say, the Seattle game 4 weeks ago, we'd have been continuing to talk about all the upside and the big games and how he's battling with this horrible defense. The tenor of it, and this includes, to me, my feelings on where Sam is based on the last, 3 or 4 weeks, where the defenses that we're going against have gotten better, and it just hasn't, right? There hasn't been that growth curve still going up. It feels like the curve is going down right now. It's not too late. He's got 3 opportunities left this year against 3 of the best defenses in football. He puts in 2 of those games. He looks like Sam did earlier in the season. Everything's going to feel different again. Clearly, the numbers are there. It's, I think, to me, whether or not he can rally and do this as best he can in this offense now on a dead team walking, to sort of get that feeling and the momentum back on his side.
I thought that the player that he compared the most equally to was Trevor Lawrence, and that's including the record, win-loss record. And if he turns out to be Trevor Lawrence, I'll take that.
Yeah, Trevor had to deal with Urban Meyer, and Sam's had to deal with Ron.
And a team that wasn't very talented at the time.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Chris, because first of all, I'm pretty sure that Jacksonville fans are not losing their mind about how Trevor Lawrence isn't an NFL starter.
Right.
And Howell's numbers are better than really that Trevor Lawrence's were. The only other thing I wanted to mention, then we can move on, is look at the records of the teams. There's this myth that the good quarterbacks get drafted by terrible teams, but this is except for Dak Prescott, that's actually his second year numbers, because his first season, it was so brilliant, it was atypical, so I just decided to use his second year. But anyway, if you look at the records of these teams, 5 of them won more than 10 or more games. 7 or 8 of them were in the playoff pick hunt or went to the playoffs. So I guess you could say, well, that's because they had really good quarterbacks. But I think what it probably means is those quarterbacks played well because the whole team played well. You know what I'm saying? I think it's really hard to, there's not many guys other than Patrick Mahomes type players that can shine on a team that's just generally not good, especially.
Sorry, John, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good, man.
You know, looking at this, so I just started picking some bits here, right? 6 of these guys were first-round draft picks, but they weren't all high first-round draft picks. Aaron Rodgers was mid-20s to a very good Green Bay team where he sat behind Brett Favre for how long?
4 years.
Yeah, Lamar Jackson was picked 32nd in the draft. So he was almost a second rounder by the Baltimore Ravens. And that's been a defensive first team for years and years and years. He fit that team to an absolute T. And then Dak was a third rounder. Jalen Hurts was a third rounder. Jalen Hurts was picked to sit behind somebody. And then he ended up working Carson Wentz right out of a job. Russell Wilson was a third rounder. Kirk Cousins was a fourth rounder who sat behind Griffin for a year and a half before he really got game time. So, a lot of these guys were not that number one, number two pick to a team that won an infinity in the year they got drafted. They had some bits and pieces. This isn't, it would be interesting to throw up a couple of the guys that are struggling this year, like Bryce Young in Carolina, and Bryce has a real defense. Think about what Sam's record would look like if we had Carolina's defense playing. Just a thought.
It makes a difference. It makes a difference.
It does. Sam goes out every week knowing he's got to put up 25 to 30 points to be in the game. No, not necessarily to win it, just to be respectable.
Well,
and
it doesn't prove anything
against the Rams.
It doesn't prove anything. This could end up being his best season as a pro, right? You just don't know. But I just thought it added some context as far as we always talk about, you remember Troy Aikman's first season? I've heard that like a million times in my adult life, but we don't really give it much credence. The fact that most quarterbacks they don't start out as a finished product. There's some growing pains along the way. So that was
that was the point I was going to make, John, is people need to realize there is a thing called development. No quarterback, this isn't Madden. He's not going to be a 76 rating for the rest of his career. Guys are taught and they learn. If you look at some of the best quarterbacks in the league right now, some of them, not all of them, there's two schools of thought. Some of them had to trial by fire and learn on the field. And the ones that do that generally don't walk in day one and prove that they're an elite quarterback capable of taking over the NFL. There's another group that sat and watched two of the most prominent ones in the league right now. One of them's at the end of his career in Aaron Rodgers, but then his success for Jordan Love and Patrick Mahomes. I mean, these guys, I'm not putting Jordan Love in the same conversation as Mahomes and Rodgers, but the point is that they were given a red shirt season. Then when they came in, there was a roster around them that helped provide them success. I hesitate to say that we even know what Sam is yet. And I'm going to say, I don't know that he's going to be elite. I'm not saying he is, but I don't think we can say he won't or can't either. I don't think the book should be closed in either direction.
Yeah. I did a much truncated version of this earlier in the season, John, that you probably saw on the board, where I threw up like 3 Hall of Fame quarterbacks, and one of them was Peyton Manning. Sam Howell's numbers are almost universally better than Peyton Manning's numbers in his first season. The only thing Peyton Manning did better his first season was the number of touchdowns he threw and the completion percentage. Sam's thrown for more yards in fewer games. Sam's thrown fewer interceptions by a lot. I mean, Peyton was giving the ball away left, right, and center. He's giving a ball away 1.5 times a game his rookie season. I mean, I agree with Derek. We don't know. We don't even know what we don't know at this point in time. Forget what we do know.
Well, here's the transition. So let's do this looking forward, right? When the new regime comes in and they are evaluating Sam Howell, they're not only going to be evaluating what happened this year with all the context we've been talking about all year, his third system in 3 years, all the problems with a line, the fact that I think he was miscast in an offense that threw the ball 50 times a game. I don't think you do that to a rookie quarterback. But the new regime, when they're evaluating him, presumably is going to be doing so in context of what kind of offense are we going to run here? Are we going to run? Do we want our quarterback to hand it off 28 times a game and throw 19? Are we going to run are we going to be a more passing kind of offense? What do we want him to do? I keep looking at Sam as the season goes on, and what I see is kind of a classic play action quarterback. I don't see a guy, a shotgun wing it all over the field quarterback. I see a guy like I heard somebody say like an Andy Dalton player, just looking for some sort of comps, or Jeff Garcia type player who can move
Eisman.
and get things done. Joe Theismann is a
Joe
good
Theismann.
example who averaged what, like 20 or 21 throws a game throughout his career. I think Sam is miscast in this offense, and I mean, I'm personally hoping that if they decide he's the guy going into next year, it's to try to run a more traditional power-based offense. Run the damn ball, protect the kid, and let him throw off play action. Because with his arm and his accuracy downfield, I mean, Joe Gibbs would have gone nuts over a guy like this.
Yeah. Especially a high character guy like Sam is. Joe just would have eaten this alive.
Yep.
And I think the other thing that we haven't talked about, this evaluation process isn't going to be just Sam. They will sit down and evaluate every single position on this offense and determine where the areas of largest need are. And I'm not sure anybody with, two decent eyes and more than a half dozen brain cells to rub together looks at this offense and thinks that quarterback is your number one position of need. Now, maybe if we were drafting first overall, you have to think about that differently. But I think everybody recognizes at this point that the consensus number one and number two quarterbacks in this draft are going to be off the board by the time we draft, unless something really strange happens in the final 3 weeks of the season. And after number one and number two, I can't even find a consensus number three guy, much less a guy that everybody in the world is absolutely convinced is going to be an NFL caliber quarterback. So then you've got to evaluate, what is this kid doing and how far can this kid go and what are our areas of biggest need? I think there's a lot that's going to go into this decision. There's a tremendous number of moving parts.
Well, and the other moving part to this, and this might be a better conversation for the draft, but the other factor here is there's not a ton of pressure of the new regime coming in, or at least there shouldn't be, for them to think that they need to put a contending product on the field in 2024. So the flexibility is 1000% there. For all we know, we end up with the 4th pick in the draft. Bears and Patriots go quarterback. If there's another quarterback somebody's in love with, you can dangle that carrot to the Jets, to the Chargers, to the Titans. Well, probably not Tennessee now. To the Falcons, to the Raiders. I mean, we could be also trading back in that scenario and
Sure.
and getting more picks. And I think the front office in this coming in would not be in a situation where they should feel that they need to undoubtedly make a drastic move or any kind of a home run shot, in their first draft. I think the best thing that they can do would be to get as much talent on this field on the team as possible. And taking a quarterback at 4 might not be that path.
I agree with that. And Bob, I'm glad you said that about if you're drafting 1 or 2 in this draft and you got 2 consensus guys that the football world agrees are kind of can't misses, that's a different conversation. At 4, that pick to me, it's almost more valuable as leverage and a trade down option as it is to taking, if they can take the best starting LT and he's going to be there for the next 15 years, then yeah, you do that. But at 4, I really like the idea of having that in our pocket, either to take the top 1 or 2 non-quarterback blue chip players in the draft, or trading it back and turning over a raft of new draft picks to this new regime to work with for the next few years.
I mean, I think where and I should have said this a second ago, kind of my thought process on this is to bring it back to Sam, is that Sam could end up with a second year just because the new guys determine that while he may not be their guy, or they aren't sure if he's their guy, they've got much bigger problems that they have to address immediately. And so Sam gets another year simply by not being the worst cog in the offensive machine. And who knows what he puts in next year in what presumably will be a different system with hopefully better players between him and the defense.
And imagine having a defense that gives you the ball on the right side of the 50 more than once every 3 or 4 weeks.
Amen.
Right. Our starting field position, has anybody looked that up this year? I meant to do that a couple of weeks ago. Seems to me we start inside our own 10 more than any team I have ever seen.
It's bad.
So we got a game on Sunday again, another one up in the cold, whatever their stadium is now. It's not the Meadowlands, I guess, but wherever the hell they play now.
I want to put you guys on the spot. Do any of you want the team to win on Sunday?
We have this conversation every week.
I'm going to have it until the end of the year, my friend.
When I'm watching the game, I 1000% am always rooting for success. I want to see my team win, but I am 100% completely understanding that winning the game might not be the best option for the long-term health of the team. So if you're going to put a gun to my head, I want us to lose 41-40, and I want
On a bad call, on a terrible call.
on a or on a missed chippy shot field goal by Joey Sly or something, because like the offense looks humming, or Sam Howell looks good, McLaurin goes for $180, the team is wins, or the Jets kick a late, but
thank you
in the
for
win
answering
column,
the question.
not...
Thank you. You did give an honest answer. You do in fact want them to lose. It's hard to say, brother. I'm right with you on the rest of it.
But when I'm watching, I don't. When I'm watching, I'm like, oh, come on. Like, I'm rooting. I am actively rooting. I will actively root every game.
Well, I'm going to admit, like I did last week, for the second time in my adult life, I am this year now in this team, in this context, hoping that pick doesn't get any worse than number 4. For all the reasons that we've talked about, I think that's an incredibly valuable asset.
And I think this weekend is the danger weekend, because if there's a team that our defense might potentially look amazing against, or an offense that our defense might look amazing against, it's the Jets.
It's the 32nd ranked offense in the NFL. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got
the backup to the backup.
We've got the resistible force meets the movable object this weekend.
They're up against the great Trevor Siemian, who has a 50-something% completion rate over the course of his illustrious career.
They also have Breece Hall and Dalvin Cook and Garrett Wilson. I mean, there's some studs on that side of the ball. They just got no one to throw it to them.
Dalvin's been a shell of himself this year, though. There's a reason that his touches are declining week by week. Part of that is because Breece Hall's getting stronger week by week after a major injury last year.
And Breece Hall is catching almost as many passes as he is running. He's one of those dual threat backs, man. So he's having a good year. He's got over like 1,200 yards total of offense.
He carried my fantasy team several weeks this year.
But they are bad. They're very consistent on offense. They're 30th ranked with the pass and 30th ranked with the rush. So they got that going for them.
Well, I've got a lot of confidence in our secondary and the ability to forget to cover Garrett Wilson once or twice during the game and have him running downfield with nobody within 20 yards of him. And even Trevor Siemian presumably can find him. So I mean, I hate to hear myself talk this way. I know how it sounds and I feel dirty talking this way, but I can't imagine how it's going to feel if we end up winning this game and end up drafting 9th over some empty win against the New York Jets in week 16 or whatever the hell it is.
Well, I'm not going to get nerdy about the draft positioning, but
I know.
I do think to that point, look, it comes back to one thing I will say is yes, I understand. I can understand the long term health of the team, but at the end of the day, you got it. Whether you're the ninth pick in the draft should still be a stud. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I can't. I don't think it's going to alter the. It should not alter the trajectory of the franchise if we're picking ninth instead of fourth. All it means is that we might address a different position.
Well, that's the other side of the coin, and I got no problem with any of that.
You know, I am a little worried about the offense against this Jets defense. And Sam is we're gonna see a whole lot more of what Sam's made of this weekend because the Jets defense is no joke.
Mm-hmm.
And Sauce Gardner is for real. Their pass rush is for real.
They have a
Got
coaching
a pair of
staff
brothers on
gonna be
defense.
working next year.
They got the Williams brothers on defense, right?
Yeah, what was that, Chris?
They have a coaching staff that's probably going to be there on the job next year too.
Well, yes.
Yeah, John, you're right. Quincy and Quinnen Williams.
Quinnen's a beast.
Yes.
The Jets
Quinnen-
lead the league in defensive starters with first names that start with Q. They also have Quinton Jefferson, just for the record.
They have something that we only dream of having, and that is impact linebacking core. Their top three tacklers are linebackers, I believe. And I mean, their sack leader is their leading tackler, CJ Mosley. Their second leading tackler is Quincy Williams. Jermaine Johnson, their sack leader, is a linebacker. So I don't know how many of those guys are actually healthy and playing on Sunday, but their linebackers are impressive.
And those of you scoring at home who've been paying attention to this podcast because you have no life, you may remember that we talked about CJ Mosley at some length in this last offseason when he was out there and available, and we did not even look in his direction longingly.
Yep. That was a guy we had circled in our podcast.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Hey, we might have linebackers next year, gentlemen. I'm excited already.
Do we want to even do predictions or what are we looking for here? You know what? We'll do predictions. Paul is not didn't join us tonight. He's doing something on a tennis court or something, probably yelling at the officials.
He had a court appointment.
Yeah. He has Washington beating the Jets 20-17.
Golly, I want to take the under. I mean, good grief, he's picking 37 points in this game. I'm having a hard time seeing 37 points. I Jets 13-7.
13-7. Oof.
I'm going to side with Brother Paul on this one, even though I'd hate to see it happen. I think Sam is going to come back and play better after getting benched. I think that's going to motivate him. He was very calm and cool about it in the presser after the game, but that's got to sting and burn because he is a human being after all. So I think he's going to have a better game, and I think we win 17-14 on a late defensive turnover that kind of seals the deal.
Not a late Cam Cheeseman field goal.
I don't know if we'll kick another field goal.
Oh, I think one of the highlights of the game is going to be how crisp and clean our long snaps are this week. To be honest with you, and I think that's going to help us because I think this one is going to be. I keep thinking about Garrett Wilson matched up one-on-one sometime in the fourth quarter and getting free and scoring a late touchdown on a long pass because we forget to cover him. I mean, I'm kind of seeing this happen. I think we've got a 16-13 lead with a few minutes to go, and Gary Wilson gets behind the secondary, and they end up winning on a late touchdown, 2016.
I'm hammering the under. New York Jets 16, Washington 9.
3 field goals, huh?
3 field goals.
Or is that a touchdown and a missed extra point in there?
It's not a safety. I know that.
Yeah, either way. So just a little tidbit on Trevor Siemian. And of course, I know he's going to come out and look like Joe Montana. Trevor Siemian came in when Zach Wilson went down in the second quarter last weekend, threw 2 interceptions and fumbled the ball. So that's what he didn't get benched though against Miami.
Is Wilson out? I know he's in concussion protocol. He's out. Okay.
Well, I don't think he's officially been ruled out.
I presume he's out.
Yeah.
He didn't get benched, John, because they'd have had to have started a running back in his place or something. That's
probably true.
I think I'm thinking funky. Washington loses 19-17. And their Jets miss an extra point.
And by the way, should Trevor Siemian stumble and get replaced by the third string, it's not a running back, at least according to the depth chart. You know who their third stringer is, right? Brett Rippon.
Oh, yeah.
Wouldn't there be some symbolism there if Brett came in and beat us?
So we have something coming up between now and our next pod, which is the holidays. So we would be remiss if we did not wish all 12 of you that are tuning in Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa. I don't know if it's Happy Kwanzaa or Merry Kwanzaa, but I hope everyone has a great holiday. Remember to love your loved ones and give them some extra hugs.
Real quick before we sign off, we did a Sam Howell conversation, and nobody brought up the fact that he got benched. And what does that mean? So I'm curious.
Since he's starting, I think it means really nothing in the long term. He's starting on Sunday.
I think it's a
mismanagement. What it meant when it happened.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think it's just
okay.
Just another mismanagement by Rivera in coming out and saying, "Oh, they're teeing off on him." Well, okay, sure, but do you think that has an effect on Sam, or do you think it was for the good? And then I'll stop talking.
I don't think it matters at all.
I don't either, and I'll look at it as an opportunity. All the quarterbacks at some point get their asses sat down. It happens to the best of them. Mark Rippon got sat down the year before. He had one of the great seasons in Redskins history. Yeah. Kirk Cousins got benched at least once, maybe twice. So if he is who we'd like to think he is, he uses this and uses it as scar tissue, and he gets stronger.
Rivera, I haven't heard him say it, but he does understand they've been eliminated, right?
And on that note, folks, Merry Christmas.
Yeah. I don't think it makes a difference to Sam in the long run. Now, I did read, and I don't know what I think about this, but Rick Snyder posted a piece today about he felt like, they benched him on Sunday and they should bench him this next week just for his own good. That, give him a week off, let him decompress, let him gather his wits for a week, where he's not running for his life and he can stand on the sideline and watch the game and think about the game plan and watch how somebody else handles this offense, and that he might learn something. I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know that I agree with it. I also don't know that I immediately disagreed with it, but I thought it was an interesting read. So, you may look it up.
I do disagree with it. I think the benching in against the Rams game, whatever, I'm sure Ron had something in his head that made sense to him at the time. For the next 3 weeks, I want Sam to get every rep he can get, put it on film for his sake and for the incoming evaluation team.
Yep.
Fair.
All right, fellas, been a pleasure.
That's all I have to say about that.
Next week, we'll be back again, and look forward to it.
Happy holidays, all.
Night, gents.
Good night.